The best preparation for home burglary or home invasion is it's a routine. It's something that you're going to do every single day. It's part of your lifestyle. It's so seamless in your daily life that you're not even aware that you're doing something that has a protective benefit.
As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
You don't automatically have a duty to retreat, but it sounds like from what you're saying, it's a very practical matter, is that if someone at least retreats, that they can, if they escape, that they can call for help. What about those who would remain behind? What actions should they, what roles and what preparations should they make?
Well, you could keep changing the scenario where you're at the point where all you could do is give up. I mean, that's not where you want to be. That's not what planning's about. And if you constantly propose that, well, what if you didn't lock your door? What if you left your windows open? What if you didn't have an escape plan? What if you didn't do anything? Well, we call them victims. Unfortunately, that's what you are. You're a victim, and you're planning to be a victim because you're not prepared. So I propose that you do things in layers. You don't start off with the most extreme cases, because I have wealthy clients who, have nothing else to do with their money, and they want this safe room in their house. So they want to build this elaborate thing like a bunker. And in almost every case, when I go back and revisit them, this elaborate project they put together now is the junk room. It's the closet. They simply don't use it for the purpose intended, because it isn't something that they use every day. So the best preparation for home burglary or home invasion is it's a routine. It's something that you're going to do every single day. It's part of your lifestyle. It's so seamless in your daily life that you're not even aware that you're doing something that has a protective benefit. So it's just like locking the doors every time, setting the alarm system every time you leave, making a lap of the house every night before you go to bed to make sure all the windows are secured. All of those kind of things you have to make as part of your routine. But for the people at home, just going with your question, should someone get in? That's where you need to have this plan and a number of alternatives. Part of the escape might not be leaving the house. Some of the escape might just be retreating back to a room. I propose to most people that room be your master bedroom. That's where most of your good stuff's going to be anyway. If you're likely to have weapons, that's where it's going to be. But you prepare that room, and if you can get just a couple of steps on an intruder, break away long enough to get a couple of steps, you can usually get to that room and close the door behind you. Okay, so that begs the question. Well, that door then has to become a significant barrier. You have to prepare it. Most interior home bedroom doors are not capable of being a good barrier. They're often just hollow core, inexpensive doors. Many or most don't have locks on them. And the strike plates are not sufficient. You could just simply kick that door open easily and they're on you. So if you're concerned about that, and I've worked with some wealthy people and made some really nice safe rooms with a doorway that looks and matches the interior decor. So it doesn't have to be some ugly, steel type door. It could just some solid core door. I usually recommend that they flip it over and turn it around backwards so it swings out to you rather than in. It's much more difficult to kick. I'll usually have them replace the wood door jamb with a steel one. Now you could paint that up and it looks identical. You can't tell that it's a steel door jamb. Put a heavy duty, grade 1 lock on it. Have a deadbolt where when you run in and slam the door behind you, there's different ways. You could have it so it will automatically latch and lock automatically. But that means someone's going to get locked out a lot. There are some issues if you have children. If you have a room that could be locked, your children may lock themselves inside. That could be a problem, but depending on what your family situation is. But you have a door that once you close it and you lock it, it becomes a significant barrier where it gives you minutes, if not hours, of protection. So once you're in that room, you have to have communication capability. So that's a room where you're going to want to have a direct dial phone. Now remember, I said direct dial, not cell phone. Have cell phone also possibly, but a direct dial phone with a speaker function capability and with one button you could hit. There's actually phones like that. You hit one button and it calls the police. Now you want it on speakerphone mode, because if that's all you do is hit that button and it calls the police dispatcher, they're going to be listening in, they're going to be recording, and you could just holler out loud to the intruder, I've called the police, they're coming, they're on the line, the dispatcher hears the urgency, they're going to send out a priority dispatch, multiple units will respond immediately, you'll hear sirens coming. So no intruder, virtually no intruder, is going to stick around for all of that. So they're going to get out of there. So that's a good strategy to have. Now, some will come back and say, well, they can cut the phone lines. And, what do I do then? Well, there's a lot of what ifs. And that what if hardly ever happens, even though it's possible. So that would be where you have the cell phone as a backup. Now, most people, if they have a cell phone, it's going to be where you are. So if you're in the kitchen and you get chased away, your cell phone's going to stay in the kitchen. So you need to have a backup plan if you're of that mind. So you usually want to have a charger in that room, charging your cell phone. Same way with flashlights or anything else. And then there's just layers you could add on top of it, layer on top of layer on top of a layer. You could have an escape route planned out through the back, through a door or through a window. If you're on a second story, you could have some sort of a ladder set up where you can get down and out. You could have a fire extinguisher in there if that becomes an issue. You could have different weapon types in there if that becomes an issue, from non-lethal to lethal. It's just layer on top of layer, and depending on the complexity, you have to plan for it. You have to train for it. You have to educate everyone in the family about it. And then when the day comes, when something like this happens, everybody's ready. I mean, they're going to scatter like cockroaches when you turn the light on. People are going to run to different rooms. Maybe someone will get to the safe room. Someone will get out a door or a window. And they're out and gone. And again, the cavalry's on its way. So I think that's the best plan for the vast majority of people.
I wanted to turn, if we could, to a couple of questions that were raised by some of our viewers. One person lives in a rural community. They said they have several sliding doors on the outside of their home, but the only practical approach to their house is from a dirt road in their driveway. And wondering if there's any changes to the thoughts that you've already shared for people who do not live in a suburban or urban environment, but people who live in a more remote environment. What additional vulnerabilities might that provide, and what kind of countermeasures should people put into their plan for a remote location?
Well, the fact that you live in a remote area down a dirt road probably means you have virtually no crime. So that changes the scenario. They're in a better situation than those living in a urban or even a suburban area because they have no crime. Now, the vulnerability part is that being isolated, you can scream your head off and no one's going to hear you and no one's going to help you. But that should be an extreme and unlikely situation. But where you're living is still a box. Even if it's a manufactured home or some older home, and like she's describing, sliding doors, even though that's not the ideal scenario, you're in a low crime area. But there are ways of treating those openings to the box, just like any place else. Those sliding doors can be secured better, so they just can't be popped open by sticks or dowels. There's devices that prevents a door from being lifted off the track or slid open. There's plastic laminates that could be applied to the sliding door glass, so it can't quickly be broken out and someone step through it. It'd actually have to chop it with like an axe to get through it. You could fortify the doors. You could have the same communication capability to get help coming. Even though in a rural area, if it's covered by sheriff, it might take them some time to get there. But those are all the choices that we make. We choose where we live and what lifestyle we want, and with it comes some challenges sometimes. But I think for the most part, that person living out in that rural community is probably better off than those living in a big city.
We've had other guests on here echoing that same sentiment, and it kind of turning to the other end of the spectrum. We have a viewer who lives in an urban area, an apartment dwelling. They said because they're not the property owner, they can't put bars on the windows. What other alternatives do they have to strengthening their windows other than barring them? I think you've mentioned a couple of ideas already. As I don't know if they would be able to add this laminate that you're talking to an apartment window, or if they'd want to do something else that they could install on the inside to make it more difficult for people to use the window as a point of entrance. What thoughts for apartment dwellers do you have?
Well, I would move, and I'm not being facetious here. I mean, move to a second story anyway. I mean, bars on the window indicates that it's accessible from the ground level. So I'm just reading into it that this person's on the ground level. Ground level apartments are just more vulnerable. And you're right, you don't own it. You didn't install the door. You didn't install the window. And they're not going to want you to make improvements. But you can always ask permission. If you don't want to move, if that's not an option, ask permission from the landlord that you want to fortify the windows, you want a stronger door, you want a better deadbolt. You want to fortify the strike plate, put a heavy-duty strike plate in there with 3-inch screws going into the door studs. Things like that, they might just say, fine, no problem. So you have to at least ask. Okay,
and I believe we had one more question came from a person who says, any tips for a single older woman who lives in a small RV/camper van? So there I think we've gone to a pretty other extreme of what could be potentially a much more vulnerable box. Any thoughts that you have for people that are in that situation?
You know, anytime you're in an extreme situation, your options become fewer and fewer. It's just as simple as that. Someone could come immediately up to your entry door. I'm just using a visualization of what you told me about. There's probably only one way in, one way out. There's really not a window to get out of. The doors on those kind of living quarters is not very strong. They usually could be pried open very easily. I mean, there's not a whole lot you could do. There's some customizations you could probably do to the outside. You might be able to add on one of those wrought iron type security doors to it to give you a little more support. A big dog, a nice German Shepherd would go a long way. All the basic stuff, lighting, things like that would help with nighttime issues. Not opening the doors to strangers would help. So it really depends on where that unit is parked, I guess. If you park it in a good zip code with a low crime neighborhood, problems. If it's located in one of those communities for mobile devices, depending on the community, if it's a safe community, your neighbor is going to watch out for you. So I think it's a matter of where it's located more than anything else.
There's so much more on this topic, and as you pointed out, layers and layers of protection requires extensive thought and planning, and you provide on your website a significant amount of lists of ideas and links for people. Are there other resources to supplement that, or do you recommend people start out at crimedoctor.com and read the articles you have there on home invasion and home security as a starting point? And then are there any other resources beyond that you recommend for people?
Sure. CrimeDoctor.com has a good cross-section of practical advice. Many things we talked about are there, including ideas for constructing a safe room, how to survive a home invasion robbery, about family planning. I talk about many of those same things. I'm starting a new website that's launching next week called Crime School. It'll be crimeschool.com. It's going to be a radio talk show, much like what you're doing, audio only, where we will go through virtually every aspect of crime prevention, loss prevention, but more in a conversational type presentation rather than articles with industry experts. You could Google almost any topic you could think of, and now there's a response out there where you can get more information about how to do almost anything. But the big thing is planning and then taking action. Most people I find in most situations, after they become victims, then they're highly motivated to do something. And for an instant, a matter of days or maybe weeks, they intend to do something, but they never quite follow through. And guess what? Those that do follow through, those that do have family plans and think about their security of their family are hardly ever victimized because they're prepared for it. Those that are not become the victims.
That's one of the paradoxes about preparedness, is that it can feel like the thing that you put the most effort into is the thing that you don't need. But if you don't, you're almost certain that you need it. My son actually sells security systems and tends to focus his marketing efforts in areas, in neighborhoods where there have been recent break-ins. For one thing, it makes the reality of the fact that we are all potentially subject to those threats more real to people when they realize that there has been break-ins just up or down their block when talking with them. But he says even when speaking with someone who has been who's experienced a break-in, depending on the amount of time that's passed since that, they may think, well, after all, that was a one-off, that probably won't ever happen again. But usually they're at least usually gets their attention, and sometimes that of the neighbors as well. But just to not be discouraged when you go ahead and have these family meetings, make this planning, decide what steps you're going to take and what preparedness you're going to take, is to not feel that it's for no purpose or for no good, because if you don't need to use it, that's what you hope will happen. I mean, you must run into that in dealing with people who are kind of on the fence about whether they should look further into this. What kind of advice do you give people so that they can explain to other family members who may be of the mindset of, just hope for the best, that sort of thing? Is there a way that's helpful in conveying the sense of responsibility that preparedness brings, even though you hope you never need to use it?
The short answer is no. People are either going to do it or they're not. I think what makes a difference is you make it part of your routine. You just decide, this is what we're going to do. This is part of our life. Walking out, locking the door is just like tying your shoes, brushing your teeth, all the things that we have to do in life. You just do it. It's part of your routine. You don't think about it. It just becomes part of the routine. And by doing that, it makes your life safer. When you drive your car, about locking your doors, about where you park, how you walk, everything that we do in life, if you do it with intention and a purpose, and it becomes part of your routine, you're going to do it, and you're going to be less likely to ever be victimized.
Well, Chris McGoey, founder of CrimeDoctor.com, security expert, thank you so much for joining us here on Reluctant Preppers. Before we let you go, are there any further thoughts that you have for our viewing audience?
Just do it.
Thank you so much.